should have an X on it or red. Click on that and it'll show you a picture.
I have everybody's pictures filling up the whole screen.
I don't have that. I don't have it.
Right, you know what? Everybody's is different. And as long as you can see us and you can hear us. So, Fran and Denise, it's all yours.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Fran for next month's announcement.
Okay,
The announcement of next month's title.
Next month's book club will be March 15th, if I've read the calendar correctly, which I might not have. And our book is Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half. And I just forgot who's presenting it, but I'm sorry. But the next book is Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half.
Diana, are you presenting?
I'm presenting. The question is it with Bonnie Zuckerman or Bonnie Cohen?
Bonnie Cohen. Bonnie Cohen. I got it. That's, of course, if I can get online.
All right, prior to forgetting, I'm taking a picture of everyone, except I have to move my computer because I'm picking up light. So everyone smile, look attentive, act like you love each other. Hi. Beautiful. Oh, wait a minute, it's not beautiful. It came out crooked. Hold on, smile again. Okay, I'm done, so go on.
How do you get that full screen of everybody?
You go into
Here I am.
settings, and settings you have a choice between 25 and 49, and I pick 40.
Oh,
But I wouldn't do it now because you'll lose us.
no.
Right.
Right.
Thank
Just keep
you.
it the way you have it now.
I'm so good with this stuff, Eileen. Okay.
I've only gotten better because I have no tips.
Can I say one thing about the vaccines before we get started?
Go for it.
Bucks County is finally opening up.
Yeah.
We were getting, we got an email from the county. We got a call today from St. Francis and St. Mary's. We got an email from St. Luke's. So it is opening up.
March
If
5th,
you got your name on it in January, you will be getting notified soon.
I got a call from St. Mary yesterday. I have an appointment tomorrow.
Oh my God.
I was vaccinated at St. Mary's about a week ago tomorrow.
I went Friday.
Of the people who got calls and appointments from St. Mary, do you recall when you registered?
Oh,
A while ago.
So did I.
January.
Write the date. Did you write the date?
It was January 28th, and I got called on
I
Saturday.
registered on the
We got a call
20th.
today.
Very random.
I don't remember.
They go by the
exactly
list, I think, when you.
Yeah, they go by the list.
Towards the very beginning of the process, I know that.
I registered on the 25th, and I haven't gotten a call, and people are getting calls.
Yeah, me
I
either.
think,
I haven't
some of
gotten
it
a
is
call
by
yet
age.
either. I
Some of it is
registered a while
age.
ago and I have not gotten a call.
I also
Yeah.
have
You could go back to the site and recheck or re-register.
Right.
And
We
I
can
did,
stop
I
you.
did go back, I've re-registered and I got a message from them that I'm on the list, but I know I registered a while ago and they did that and they still haven't called me.
Elaine
Yeah.
and others, some of it is by age or if you have a very bad condition.
Well, I'm
Was it- in
75.
other words,
Now it's
this is how
65
it's
plus.
saying 65 and
It's
above.
all 65 plus, and not doing it by age or.
But
Okay.
I'm 75, so I'm
Everybody.
We need book club. We need
We're
book
all going to get
club.
vaccinated. I have great faith, but we need to go on.
Sorry, just wanted to tell you, it'll happen.
It's
already
already 11 minutes after.
Right.
Yes.
So Jeannie and Vivian, go for it.
Okay. I first want to give a shout out to Helen Mintzes for sending us those great links. And yesterday she sent us a great list of the characters. So I'm not going to do anything about a plot summary because I think that we will be very well acquainted with the characters through those wonderful links. I'm going to start out with a biography of Kim Michelle Richardson. It's a little tough to find. You'll find out why. Kim Richardson, about age 51, was born in Kentucky and grew up in an orphanage, the St. Thomas St. Vincent Orphan Asylum near Anchorage, Kentucky. She and her three sisters spent about a decade in the orphanage. And Kim, after several stays with foster families, found herself homeless at age 14. Richardson recounted her experiences in the orphanage during the 1960s in a memoir which was published in 2009 called The Unbreakable Child, a story about forgiving the unforgivable and it echoes many of the tales of alleged horrors of abuse at the orphanage. She joined a lawsuit against the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth in 2004, which was settled out of court. Richardson is a mother of two who has remained a Catholic and sent her children to Catholic school. Money from the out-of-court settlement paying her younger child's remaining years of tuition. She's been married to a Louisville Metro Police major for 20 years, and he, to quote her, creates cool, detailed drawings of her fictional towns to anchor her and keep her straight. Kim did meticulous research, 3 years of about 14 to 16-hour days for this historical novel, and she can relate to growing up under the grinding heels of poverty. These are some more quotes from her. Librarians are lifelines for so many, giving us powerful resources to help us become empowered. Poverty and marginalization are not so much economics or politics or societal issues as much as they are human issues. They are best grappled with by reaching deep into the lives of those suffering them, knowing one small piece of the world, the earth, the sky, the plants, the people, and the very air of it, helps us to understand the sufferings and joys of others, ourselves. I'll talk a little bit about the Packhorse Librarian Project. There was a lot of information in the book that I had, as well as information that Helen sent us the link. The Packhorse Library Initiative, which sent librarians deep into Appalachia, was one of the New Deal's most unique plans. The project is implemented by the Works Progress Administration, WPA, in 1935, distributed reading material to the people who lived in the craggy 10,000 square mile portion of eastern Kentucky. The state already trailed its neighbors in electricity and highways. And during the Depression, food, education, and economic opportunity were even scarcer for Appalachians. They also lacked books. This is an interesting statistic. In 1930, up to 31% of people in eastern Kentucky could not read. Residents wanted to learn, and many were poised to, in the industrialized eastern Kentucky loomed large in the minds of many Appalachians who were ready to take part in the hope prosperity that would bring. Workers viewed the sudden economic changes as a threat to their survival, and literacy as a means of escape from a vicious economic trap. That was not shared by all. We'll talk about that. Unlike many New Deal projects, the Packhorse Plan required help from locals. Libraries were housed in any facility that would step up, from churches to post offices. Librarians manned these outposts, giving books to carriers who then climbed aboard their mules or horses, panniers loaded with books, and headed into the hills. They took their job as seriously as mail carriers and crossed streams in wintry conditions, feet frozen in the stirrups. Carriers rode out at least twice a month, with each route covering 100 to 120 miles a week. When materials became too worn to circulate, the librarians made them into new books. They pasted stories and pictures from the worn books into binders, turning them into new reading material. Recipes, also pasted into binders and circulated, proved so popular that the Kentuckians started scrapbooks of quilt patterns too. One of the most popular books was Robinson Crusoe. Since so many adults could not read, illustrated books were among the most beloved. Illiterate adults relied on their literate children to help decipher them. There's one other interesting aspect I wanted to bring up about a possible plagiarism of this book. And this was reported in BuzzFeed News. And I don't know if you know anything about that, but it originated in 2011. And it is a reputable resource or source of journalism and has won awards. And I didn't know anything about it, but here's what they said. The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richardson, a native Kentucky author, was published as historical fiction. The song, Book Woman of Troublesome Creek, was created in May 2019 as a tribute to the book, with words and music by Ruby Friedman. And you can hear this song on the link that Helen sent. It's the one that says pictures. If you click on that, this song is sung and you can hear the actual instrumentation. In October 2019, Jojo Moyes published The Giver of Stars, a fictionalized version of one woman's involvement in the project. On October 7th, 2019, Richardson accused Moyes of writing a novel with alarming similarities to her own, and was quoted as saying, quote, "None of the similarities found in Moyes' novel can be chalked up to the realities of history, nor can be found in any historical records, archives, or photographs of the Packhorse Librarian Project initiative that I meticulously studied. These fictional devices, plot points, were ones I invented." And now there's a movie coming out based on The Giver of Stars, which is the one that she thinks plagiarized her book. So that's coming out, produced by the same person that produced the movie Me Before You, with the author, and the author is also going to help produce the movie. So you can make up your own mind about that situation. And I'm now going to turn this over to Vivian. She's going to talk about the blue people, methaglobinemia, and the blue people and miscegenation.
Methemoglobinemia.
How do you pronounce? Say it again. I think it's methemoglobinemia, right?
Right.
Okay, good.
Okay.
The screen is yours.
The blue people, and I don't like to read, so it's off the top of my head. I prepared. The blue people originated, they believe, in northwestern France, in the Normandy, in Western Normandy, and they are Huguenots. Huguenots are the Protestants of France, and there was a lot of intermarriages. However, it's in the Kentucky, it started with Martin Fugate, who came from France and married Elizabeth Smith, who was a red-haired person, and he was white as could be, but they had recessive genes. Unknowingly, they got married, they had 7 kids, and 4 of them were blue. And because of the Kentucky topography, because of the quality of life or where they were, there was a lot of intermarriage. So that's how we had intermarriage. I mean, Martin Fugate's grandson married his mother's sister. So there's a lot of close relation getting married. And that's how they continued to have the blue blood. Actually, I don't know, and people do not know. I couldn't find any truth to that, but they're talking about the blue bloods, the royalty. Were they blue people? Who knows? Anyway, their blood, the color of their blood is actually brown because it lacks an enzyme and oxygenation. And the way to correct that, it was found through research, and it took them a long time, and the research was not finished until the 1960s. But niacin, and that's why we have a lot of niacin added to our food product, is an antidote to the methemoglobinemia, whatever that is. Okay, so that's why they're blue. They're healthy. They don't have any other problem but the color of their skin. And of course, in the book, we knew that by taking the methylene blue pill, they could correct that color very quickly. But unfortunately, the side effects really were awful. So that's the story of the blue people. And apparently there are Eskimos who suffer from the same thing, and they combined and they're researched, and that's definitely true. One other thing I was curious about was the pellagra that disease that Henry suffered from. And I was so curious, I went online and looked it up. And there was a very interesting little cartoon explaining it. And did I mix up? They found out that actually the pellagra was malnutrition. That's where the niacin came in with the pellagra. They didn't have yeast, they didn't have niacin, and there's a Dr. Goldberger who finally saw to it to how to cure the pellagra, but it was really, pictures are awful, and that's about it. Not talking about it anymore. Okay, you have the questions?
So do you still want me to read them? Or are you?
Oh, sure. It doesn't matter. We can have you do that. And then you can call on people because you can see the people better than we can. The names are so small, I'd have to get a magnifying glass to see the names. So.
Okay. Before reading the novel, had you ever heard about the blue-skinned people of Kentucky? What about the Packhorse librarians? Did you research anything more about the two outside of reading?
I think we covered that.
Okay, never mind. Unless anyone wants to say something.
I do. I'd like to say something. Greg, my middle son, lives in Lower Merion, and their neighborhood, and I don't know how or when this started, in front of like every couple blocks, there is a little miniature library where you're free to take a book and put a book. And it's very nice, and people actually use it. There are some newer books, some older books. Of course, now I don't know if people use it during COVID, but it's like a wooden stand with a little tiny library. It's really neat.
They have them at some of the nature centers too. I can tell you, Silver Lake Nature Center does that as well.
They started one in my development, one of the streets they do. It's basically for children's books, but they started it since COVID so that people can put a book in and take a book out.
So the first time I ever heard of this was when I was living in California, and my hairdresser, she's had it, and this would have been before 2014. And she had the little place that you could put the books. I thought that was amazing. She was very literate. It was great. But my neighbor around the corner has it as well. It's a wonderful little giving library. You take a book, you get a book, and you don't have to return that book.
Some of the kids that Shira made did that for their barn bat mitzvah project. They collected books for this.
That's terrific. I love it. Okay, number 2. The book starts off with Cussy Mary being courted by some truly terrible suitors, and finally married off to Charles Fraser. How do you feel about Pa encouraging this despite Cussy's objections? When things went awry and she moved back home, were you able to forgive him? What instances of gender inequality most shocked you from the book? Where to start? Who wants to start?
Well, it was awful that once women married, they could not work. They had to have the father's permission to marry, and they were married at the age of 6, actually before 16. At 16, Angelique was pregnant and giving birth, and they had no say in the matter. Another one was the RC up in his tower. He wanted to marry this young Ruth, and he had to actually fight the father. And he was beaten by the father and the brother, and they told him, oh, okay, because you fought for her, you could have her. I mean, it's an exchange of property, and that was very painful to read.
Helene?
I think one of the things that affected me most in the book was the violence and the abuse, that it was allowed to be, like you mentioned about the marriage part. They thought that beating up somebody showed how much you cared. So they valued violence over love and caring. And I found that even with the marriage, how he physically abused her because she was blue and less than human in his mind. And again, you know, that really just upset me very, very much. I don't know if that bothered anybody else, the abuse. Even the way the doctor treated her at the hospital was so abusive.
Okay, Libby, and then Harriet, and then Diana. Libby, you're muted.
I think I understood and sympathized with the father's desire to marry his daughter. He felt that he was not going to live long, and he knew her chances of marrying, because she was blue, were slim to none. There was extreme prejudice and cruelty. So I think it was a matter of ensuring that she would survive if he found someone to marry her. He was so desperate that he offered 10 acres of land. But I don't think it was ill-intended. He had no way of knowing that the man that she would marry would rape her and beat her.
Yep, Harriet.
There was a lot of ignorance. People thought with blue, and there's a reverberant one, but people thought people with blue skin were like, they were superstitious about them, that they had the devil in them, all kinds of, what's the Yiddish word? Rachmanos, something like that. Susie, you can help me. But they didn't really understand it as the characters didn't understand it until they learned about it. So they attributed a lot of fear to the unknown.
Diana?
I just wanted to say the fire tower RC's girlfriend was age 15. And the reason why her family was so against her leaving was she was the only female in the family, so she was treated like a servant. They didn't want to lose their cook and laundress and cleaner and hard worker, and that was part of the reason they objected. By 19, females were considered spinsters. And the thing that bothered me, just like with all of you, was that the Cussie's father, who really meant well, he really did, but he offered the 10 acres of land, and every suitor, and it's specified there were dozens, each one wanted to see the deed to the land before they even met Cussie. So that tells you where females stood in that whole process.
Anybody else? Denise?
Yes, it's hard for us to understand today the whole attitude of the people and the whole idea that you had to have a man to take care of you. But in actuality, you did in that kind of an environment. You know, if you were lucky, you were partners and you got along and loved each other. But it's just so jarring to think about those times and then think about the way we are today.
Thank God. Jeannie, and then Donna.
Also, the father was running out of time to find somebody for her because he was dying of probably black lung, and her mother had already passed away. And as we said, he felt she needed somebody to protect her. So he was running out of time.
Donna?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody was saying. Your insights are beautiful. The father who was dying, it was his role, he felt, since he promised his wife that he would marry off his daughter, that he thought that was how she could be provided for. I have to say her dedication to being the librarian was amazing. And it touched me that how she touched so many of her clients that she brought books to, that she read to, that woman that was blind, that she kind of took care of her a little bit. She went beyond the role of being a librarian. She actually was a nurturer of many different ways. And I admired her for that, and all the other PAC women that took upon that job.
Which I think made how she was treated even worse. You know what? Because she was such a good person, and all a lot of people saw was her color. And it hasn't been that long since we actually have had the right to vote and somewhat equal rights. And I think like before Phil became a psychologist, he was a teacher in Kensington. And if he would suggest to a parent that a girl was extremely bright and needed to go to college, he was often met with disdain. Like, why would that happen? Actually, I'm thinking like in his own family, one of the cousins who's my age, when she wanted to go to college, was told by her parents that girls don't need college because you get married. Thank God she went anyway.
That was a very European belief, because I've had it in my family. They've all since passed, but your brother goes to college, you don't go to college.
And often there was only enough money for the brothers, and they were always prioritized.
Yeah, my mother resented that to the day she died because her brother was going to be a doctor. So she took a job with the political party in power at that point in Philadelphia, so she would have an in for him to get into medical school. Yeah.
So
God, we are lucky now. Yes, Donna.
It was a feeling of the times. Somebody mentioned that there's only so much money that was set aside for education, and that would go to the boy. The men were the breadwinners. The women, they could work, but once they got married, their job was then to have babies. So the times were like that. I have a friend who's our age, and her brother, who's 8 years older, he of course went to college. She was never considered to go to college, and she's a smart person. It's a shame she never was given that opportunity.
Got it. Okay, number 3, discuss Pa and other characters' pride and refusal to work for the WPA program despite its benefits. Somebody needs to mute. RC has refused his girl's hand because he works for the We Poke Along, which is the WPA, that's just a name, program. Why do you think that folks would rather starve than participate? Do you have any family history with the WPA? Did you or your family experience any stigma from participating in the program? Anybody? Fran?
I no experience, but I think at that point in time with that group of people that they looked on it as getting a handout. And their pride would not allow that. You were not supposed to take charity or a handout. You were supposed to do it on your own somehow. And actually, it was honest, honorable work that they were being paid for.
Absolutely. And I think that people today still, many people don't want to have any kind of government relief because it's charity and they don't want to need charity. Ellen?
There's someone in the book that I forgot the name. The man who worked for the WPA building the Hoover Dam. And when he came back from that, he was one of the most respected people in the community.
Because he came back with money. He could buy land.
That's right. But the thing is, they didn't want to, they were suspicious of the WPA until somebody was successful with it.
Right. Sandy.
Well, also the people of West Virginia led a very insular lifestyle, and the government with the big G was not something that was welcome to them. They wanted to help each other, but they definitely were very suspicious of outsiders, especially the government. And again, they did not want to take charity. They wanted to take care of themselves.
Anybody before I go on? Okay. Cussy Mary and the Packhorse, excuse me. Cussy Mary and the Packhorse librarians encourage knowledge, reading, and education by bringing their far-reaching patrons books that would otherwise have never reached them in hopes of improving their lives. Yet Cussy never has the courage herself to dream bigger, to consider leaving Kentucky, or to stand up to the discrimination she faces. Why do you think this is? Vivian.
Well, she grew up being blue. She grew up being shunned. It was terrible for her, but on the other hand, within her family, she was appreciated. She was taught by her mother to read, and she did the best she could given the circumstances. She went and got herself a job, which Pa did not agree with because she worked for the WPA, but she was very proud of that. And at that point, that was an accomplishment. So she did go and find something for her, and she was very successful at it, obviously.
Margie, you're muted.
I was going to say the same as Vivian. I think, she didn't think about furthering her life because she was blue and she was going to be so discriminated upon. She just knew she was going to stay in this town and take care of herself and help people to the best of her ability. And I think that's why she really didn't want to get married, because she didn't think it would be a good marriage. She's blue. It wouldn't do well. She just wanted to take care of herself.
Lori?
Have to unmute. I don't think, you're saying she wanted to take care of others. We saw that she did take care of others. She really was very caring and considerate. Even though she was blue, she did everything she could. And if you look at it some way, she had compassion for people that others did not care for. She was worried about starving children. She was worried about the blind woman. So when you say that she doesn't, I don't think you can say that she didn't want to do better. She wanted to do better for others. She wanted to help others. It was a compassion she had. She thought about all of the people on her route as what their needs were. I think she was raised very well by her parents. Her father was caring. Her mother evidently had to have been a caring person too, to make the husband make the promises that he did for the daughter. That she was a young woman. That as you grow and become more mature, I think at any time as you mature, then you feel that it's easier to branch out and do more. I thought that for someone her age, in her circumstances, she was very brave and outgoing and just a fabulous person. I mean, she had a good heart.
Yes. Jeannie?
I think that she did dream a bit. I would a little bit dispute the question, because she did think about trying to join Queenie Johnson. And although it didn't seem realistic, it gave her a dream to think about. But she was torn because she felt she really had a lot of responsibility in the community, and especially to her father. So she was really torn.
Elaine?
I think a little bit of it too was she was afraid of what people were going to think somewhere else. She already knew what she faced where she was, but she didn't know what it was going to be like once she went off somewhere else. And I think one of the reasons why she didn't want to get married was she didn't want to bring a child into this world who looked like her.
I think it's also very natural that when you've been beaten down, that you see your world as limited, that you don't want to bring any more grief on yourself. If you think about all of the years that African Americans had to know their place, and Jews too in the ghetto, like, were we going to make money? It takes a special kind of person to see past your present circumstances. So, Helene?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on what Jeannie said about Queenie. I really was expecting at one point in the novel that she would join Queenie in Philadelphia, because she gave her the impetus that even though she was African American, color didn't matter. And there was opportunity for her to get further educated like Queenie did. So I don't know what really held her back. Was it fear, or was it loyalty to her community? But I really thought that she would have gone the route Queenie did. I think she had that. And she was bright enough and strong enough and motivated enough.
Anybody else? Ann?
She didn't want to leave her father either. He was still alive for most of it. She didn't want to leave him alone.
Can everybody mute if you're not speaking, please?
Fran?
And the truth of the matter is, her horizons were limited by virtue of the lifestyle they had there. She was living a life that most people live there. And what she wanted, I mean, she was a loving person. So what she wanted was probably a mate and a family and to live the life. And she was involved in the community and she loved her job. And the books provided an escape for her because she loved to read, and reading will always do that.
Okay.
Marie? Okay. The book ends fairly abruptly after things fall apart. At Cussie's second wedding, we are given a short glimpse into the future 4 years after an epilogue-like chapter, but not much. Did this leave you wanting? Did you appreciate the events at the wedding because they were true to life, or did they leave you disappointed and wishing for more vindication? To me, it was like, I was shocked, but not surprised because she was considered colored and those were the laws. He was white. Horrible, but I wasn't surprised. Vivian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, they did allow her to marry the first husband who abused her brutally, and they didn't claim the law, but the law, they changed the wording of the law, and that became any colored people. Before it was Negro and white. So that's why. And nobody could convince them that she actually was a white person. Doc tried and tried, and other people witnessed that she turned white, or she was a white person when she was on the medication. But
Right.
the sheriff was after to get her, or to get Jackson, no matter what. That was it. He was against that marriage, and nothing would go on without his approval.
I think it was her boss. It would have gone unnoticed, except that her boss was jealous. I think she thought she wanted Jackson, and she was really disappointed that Cussie got Jackson. I mean, who was she to get this guy?
I think you're right. Sad. Jeannie, and then Diana.
I thought it was interesting to see the people who defended her and when they, started beating up on Jackson, and it was RC and Devil John, who initially were very reticent about, the way that she was delivering information, especially Devil John. So he had a kind of a turnaround, and you wonder if that would have really happened in real life. Would there be people that would speak up knowing that the crowd was going to be against them?
Yeah.
One hopes. Diana?
I was curious why only Jackson was jailed and she was not. How many of you saw the movie Loving?
I did.
Which took place a little bit later, but it was about an interracial marriage in the South, and they were put in jail. And even though they owned land in the South, they also got banned from stepping into the state, whichever state it was. I don't know if you remember, for a number of years, and had to go to relatives up north for that
Yeah.
time. So that confused me. Was it because Jackson fought back against the sheriff and then was beaten brutally? Or was it because of that particular law? I was confused about that.
I think they were trying to make an example of him. Like, this is what will happen. So it would discourage other men from doing this.
Helene?
Why do you think they didn't move out of West Virginia? Because they, even after he got out of jail, Jackson was living up where he was. Cussie was living where she was in her father's cabin, even though the father had passed at that point, and she was raising the child. But why didn't they just leave West Virginia and go up north? He had money. That didn't make any sense to me. Did anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, one of the neighbors, one of the other people, he had a lot of land, and one of the other people, I forget who it was, quietly was selling off his land so that they could get together, I suppose.
I think it was Mr. Dalton, the banker, who was trying to help him.
Right, and he was at the last parcel of land that Jackson had that he was selling off. And Jackson was coming in to visit her during night times. And I guess he could have gotten killed if they ever found him, because they told him never to come back into Kentucky for 25 years.
That's right. That was the sheriff's, what he was, fixing his nose in that, because he wanted, it was just his personal crusade to make sure that he would not be able to come back for 25 years. That was his prerequisite for getting out of jail.
But they got rid of the sheriff. They voted him out.
Correct.
But it was against the law. Also, they were following the law. They were not allowed to get married in Kentucky. That's a law. So,
and I think that law wasn't even rescinded until 1967. Is that correct, Vivian? Yep. Do you know a little bit more about the laws? Did you look up information about that?
I looked up, and they give a few information here and there, but people of different color could not marry. And there was no intermarriage allowed. And that was the result here. They don't talk about it so much, but it's not just in the United States. They're talking about Germany, they're talking about Italy, they talk about different countries where different religion cannot intermarry, and that was one of the case. Not until 1967 in the United States was that law rescinded.
I think also they needed to have the money to move, in answer to Helene's question. I mean, people stay often where they're not wanted because they can't go anywhere else. That was true of us in the countries in which we were not wanted. So in selling off the land, they had finally the money to be together and to get out of there. Anybody else? Okay. Cussie loses several treasured people over the course of the book, reminding the reader of the harsh life in Appalachia. Which loss touched you the most? Do you think that there was anything that might have happened to prevent any of them? Did the hardships the characters endured make you appreciate your own blessings, like 1,000-fold? Margie?
The one that really bothered me was Angelina. I mean, here she is, a 16-year-old. She's pregnant. She's malnourished. You know, her husband's gone. She knows she's going to die, and she wants Cussie to raise the baby. That one really got to me. I thought that was just so sad, so tragic, so unnecessary. But that's the environment of Kentucky in that time.
Right. Anna and then Denise.
A couple of them did touch me. Yeah, I agree with Margie. Interesting that she ended up getting a blue baby after that 16-year-old did die, where she hadn't wanted children before that because she didn't want to have another blue baby come into the world. But she was a wonderful mother when she did get that little infant. the little boy that she wanted to feed, and the teacher said, no, if you feed him, you have to feed everybody. That little boy and his family really touched me, where they died for the malnutrition. And I believe it was he who said that his mother was pregnant and he hopes she doesn't lose that baby like she's lost other babies. It was malnutrition was a way of life for those people, and it's very sad.
That was Henry.
Okay. And but the malnutrition it was just such a sad situation. And I think she brought food for the class at one point, which she had a big heart.
Denise?
That was actually just what I was going to say. Henry, I thought that was so tragic, and others like him that were also on that path to starvation. And the fact that Cussie tried to help by bringing food to the school, it was just heartbreaking.
It was presumed that the whole family was going to die, Henry's whole family.
Right.
Audrey?
And Henry was so kind. He gave Cussie the lifesaver. And that I thought was so touching. She wouldn't even eat it. She held it, but for him to give her a lifesaver, and he was starving. It was, and I also thought Angelique, but both of them were so tragically sad. The lifesaver thing was very touching.
Right. Pam?
I think that was one of the reasons why she put herself through the abuse with those terrible nuns that were so abusive to her, is because she kept asking the doctor, if I go, will you give me food? And that's how she was able to share the food, not for herself, but for the children and the parents that were so desperately starving.
Fran and then Vivian. Fran, you're muted. You're still muted. I cannot unmute you.
No, I figured it out.
Okay.
In the wrong spot. I think Angelique's husband, it was probably not as touching as some of the other stories. Henry touched me the most, but Angelique's husband, because he had the blue baby, committing suicide, he hanged himself. It was just sort of horrific. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
And pointed out how bleak their lives were.
Actually, hey, the husband actually was really blue, because when she went there, his toes were blue, and they thought it was because of what happened to him. He got hurt or something. But in the end, he probably didn't, maybe he didn't know, but, and he wouldn't let Cussie touch him when she brought stuff to fix his wounds. So he was really, it was so bad that he committed suicide.
Harriet, did you have your hand up? Can't hear you.
Someone else had already said something very similar.
Okay. Fran?
There was a lesser form of blue. That was the first scene in the book.
Yeah.
Harry hanging with a tree with a baby, which hit me after I finished the book, actually. It didn't hit me when I was reading it again. But whatever he had, I forget the name of it, but it was a lesser form of the blue, and those people could hide it because it was just in their nails, by wearing socks, by covering their hands. So he probably was aware of it, or aware that something was off, but he didn't, he could hide it. And he didn't think that his wife was blue. And then she must have had the recessive gene.
It's similar. I've just started the next book, but I know from when I taught in North Philly that among many African Americans, being lighter was better and to be desired. And I guess there is a hierarchy of blue people also, which just made it kind of sadder that he would do that when he had the blue baby. Anybody else? Nancy, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. I thought Henry definitely was my most heartbreaking character, but I felt badly for RC. He in the lighthouse. He had such drive and such ambition, and to be treated the way he was by, I forget her name, Lucy, or the betrothed family was just horrendous.
Yep. Okay. I should mark where I am. Cussy Mary is called a heathen, sinner, or even a witch in the novel, primarily due to her blue color and fear that resulted from not knowing what caused it. Even when Doc finds the underlying reason for Cussy's color, even after she takes medication that turns her white temporarily, she is still subject to discrimination and hatred. Discuss the scenes at the 4th of July celebration and at her wedding. Why do you think the people still refuse to accept Cussy even after her disease is discovered?
Fear. People were afraid. They were afraid that they would get the disease from her. You know, there was a lot of misunderstanding about it. And if I touch a blue person, then would I turn blue? So they really didn't want to have anything with her because they were afraid. And I think that's the main reason why they were like that. Harriet was jealous of her. That's a different story. But the majority of the people were afraid of the disease.
I think you're a nicer person than me. I think that people like having someone lower than them on the social rung. And I think it's one of the reasons African Americans have been discriminated against for so long, because it's nice to have someone below you. And some of the worst cases I saw was when my husband was teaching in Kensington, and there were a lot of people that didn't have money. So it was nice to discriminate against someone who they considered lower on the rung. Also, why we were killed in World War II. It was nice to think the Jews were lower down than your regular old German. But maybe I'm a cynic. Anybody else? Sandy?
I also think that the people were very superstitious. They didn't understand that she was actually white and it was an ailment. There was no belief or knowledge of science. So as far as they were concerned, whatever superstitions they held was the real reason, and the fact that they were afraid of her because if they touched her, they would turn blue, or she was a witch or whatever, that was the prevailing thought. And the fact that it was a physical ailment didn't enter into it.
Anybody else? Barb?
One of the lines that stayed with me was in the I think it was the library, when she was told, you can clean the bathroom, but you can't use it. And that really stayed with me. It was like shocking. Like it almost reminded me of The Help when they had the separate bathrooms. And even when she was white and she wanted to be part of that group, they would not accept her when she took the medication and she appeared white. And that's when she realized that she wasn't going to take the medication anymore. It wasn't worth it. So just some thoughts of mine.
No, and that's funny because as soon as you started talking, I thought of The Help immediately, that blacks were good enough to take care of their kids, but not to use their bathrooms. There's a kind of disconnect in there that I've never gotten. Helene?
I thought it was just a commentary on prejudice. I thought, remember the doctor's black maid wouldn't even allow Cussy into the house, even though the doctor invited her in and said, no, you can't come in. I'm protecting my mistress who passed away from you. And yet she was black. So I think, she thought she was better than a blue person. And because they accepted her in the house. So I think it was just a hierarchy similar to what you were saying, Eileen, about, hierarchy of prejudice,
Lori?
I think the author tried to show you that both Queenie and Cussie were women that could take care of themselves, were intelligent and bright, to let you see that these prejudices were not well served, that people's indication of what they thought of these people were not who these people really were. That there's a lot of commentary that this author put into the book.
I thought I saw someone else's hand. Barb? Barb?
Yeah. She got Queenie when she sent the letter from Philadelphia. One of the lines in there was that her boss thought she was pretty bright for a Negro.
Which is really sad, yes. Anybody else? Other Barb.
Other Barb. The book to me showed the contrast between how horrible hatred and fear of the unknown is, as opposed to total kindness. How Cussie brought so much more to her people than the written word. She brought kindness and food and help in any way that she could. So it was the contrast between those two. I thought this jumped out of the pages.
Diana?
Building on what you said, Barb, about the kindness. Yes, Cussie brought all the food she got for herself being tested. She brought the medicine to Angelina's husband, Willie, which was the only reason that his leg didn't have to be cut off for gangrene, because that was what was happening with his foot. The medicine she brought, that she also got from the doctor for herself, that she gave to him, helped save his life, even though he didn't appreciate it. And also, she and the other pack horse librarians were part of the postal system. There were parts of that wild place that the mail people couldn't reach. But if you remember, Cussie brought some mail to and from RC and the fire tower and to other places, because she was heading in that direction so she can get the letters on the way. So, yeah, as you said, the librarians gave a lot more than books.
Okay, thank you.
Eileen, can I make one brief comment? Sure. In the song, if you listen, one of the lyrics says that the pack horse librarians brought food for the soul. So I think that kind of sums up a lot about what we think their real role was and how kind they were.
I agree. How did Richardson's use of a Kentucky blue, a skin color you might have never before, oh, wait a minute, illuminate racial discrimination to you in a new way? Did being white change who Cussie was or just how other people saw her? Do you think Cussie should have continued the medication to make her life easier despite the side effects? Margie?
I don't think, her taking the medication, the people saw her the same as we discussed. They saw her as a blue person no matter what. They didn't want to go near her or anything. As to taking the medication, it really didn't change how people felt about her, so why take it? It gave her a side effect. She was content to live her life the way she was and do the best that she could with what she had.
Donna?
Yeah, to go off of what Margie just said, I agree. She took the medicine and she changed her color, but yet nobody could see that she was white. They still knew her to be a bluette, and she was blue, and that was it. So with all the side effects, the nausea, it didn't make sense for her to continue with the medication.
Vivian?
Remember at the beginning when she started with the medication, she kept on looking at herself and admiring her hands and admiring her color. So yes, she was very happy about that change. But since the side effects were horrible and people treated her as horrible as ever. So she gave up on the medication. And also Jackson had made a comment of, why do you need that? But she really did admire herself when she turned white.
Fran?
It's interesting. It's almost a commentary. Well, it is a commentary or inner beauty as opposed to outer beauty. And the way she saw herself, she couldn't believe that she was pretty. Other people couldn't believe that she was different from the way she was. You can't trust that in a way. It's like somebody who wins a ton of money on the lottery. He doesn't know if all these new friends are because of his money or because of himself. And here the people didn't even accept her. So it was really a problem. It was sort of sad. It was sad, really, because she had found there was a solution that she couldn't take advantage of. And in the end, she was probably better off not doing it because of the side effects that she was getting. It probably would have made her sicker eventually.
It brought me back to articles I read years ago when cochlear implants were first introduced, with people in the deaf community to do or not to do because they had always lived their lives a certain way. And was this a change they wanted to make? Diana?
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. You're talking about how she sees herself versus how others see her when she became white or looked white. Either Eula or Harriet, one of those librarians, her superiors who were mean to her, said something to her after she became white. It said this was the first time she actually lifted her chin, put back her shoulders, and looked them in the eye. So she felt herself, now she felt that she was higher and she looked at herself a different way compared to others. So I thought this author was wonderful, how she how she saw different things like that and expressed them.
Anyone else? Bonnie and then Jeannie.
Okay, I think it kind of shows, like we talked about people being so hateful and being so prejudiced, but even when the facts are right in front of you, there's no way you're going to change some people's minds, just about things. People get ideas, they get preconceived notions, and it's like cast in stone. They don't take, any facts into consideration at all. And I think that's a big factor of how they, ultimately treat people.
Before we go on, I just want to say some people have signed off and said how much they enjoyed all of this. Jody and Harriet and Rona. Okay, I did my job. Now.
Okay. I think she began to realize that she could live with the blueness when she talked to someone like Orrin Taff, who was that male librarian, and he said that she reminded him of Picasso blue. If you remember, and she started thinking about the blue sky and how, this really could be a condition she could live with and accept herself for that.
Nancy? Then Ann?
I really, I agreed with everything Margie said earlier, but I really respected her for the fact that she went off it. And she said, this is who I am. I'm a good person. I'll still be kind to everybody, do what I can for them. And I don't need the aggravation of the side effects of this. And I think with that, she thought more of herself.
Ann? Did you have your hand up?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I always get confused with that thing. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking also about her eventual husband. What was his name? Jackson?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just looked at her and saw a beautiful person beneath the blue. He didn't care about the blue collar. I have a feeling that she was pretty, not that it matters, but I'm just saying that because someone said to her, oh, you were pretty before, but even prettier now. And when she became white, for a short time. But he
he looked beyond that and he just saw this beautiful person and he saw what she was like inside. And I think that really helped her a lot, thinking, well, he can love me the way I am. I don't have to be blue. I mean, I don't have to be white.
Donna?
I really appreciate what Jeannie just said. You see things a certain way, and it's a power of thought, where now she thought, I can live with this. She turned it around in her mind that it's okay that she was blue. She found positive things about being blue. Also, she had great parents because she was such a good person. It could have come within herself, but her parents also showed her ways to be good to others, and she was a very good person. And I'm glad that she was able to see in herself her own goodness, regardless of her color.
I agree. And Helene just left us and said she enjoyed it also. Bye, Helene. Yes, Fran.
I think it reflected a maturation in her because she had, I mean, she was what, about 17 or 18 when the story started, and she wanted to be like everyone else. Part of that blueness was she couldn't see anything beautiful about herself because she wasn't like everybody else and because she was put down. As time went on, she realized that she found a strength and she had the strength to be herself. So that was my thought on the whole subject right now.
Anybody else? Okay. Cussie and the other pack horse librarians traveled miles each day alone through the mountains. Cussie spent every night alone as her pa went to work at the coal mine. Would you have been as brave? If you didn't think Cussie found her full voice and stood up for herself, does thinking about this change how courageous she was in your mind? How do you think the definition of courage changes relative to time period and economic conditions? Well, I thought it was just amazing that she went out and got herself a job when everything was against it, that it became so important to her. And she was very courageous to go up in the mountains and the dangerous trails and to see everybody and bring so many things to the people she served. Donna.
I liked her mule.
The
mule was like her protector. I mean, he stomped out, I don't know the guy's name, but the preacher guy that wanted to hurt her. He wouldn't go forward, and he kind of watched out for her. And she also watched out for the mule, where she told different people he likes carrots or sugar, whatever it was that he likes. But the mule had an important place in this book.
And helped her have courage because, yeah, absolutely. And
he was part of her support system.
Right. Margie. And then Bonnie.
Okay, to me, in her own way, she was an independent woman, and anybody who knows me, that is really important to me. She spoke her mind. She did what she felt was right, and with all the difficulties and trials and tribulations, and I truly admire her for who she is.
Bonnie Zuckerman?
I agree. Just all the dangers that she potentially encountered, on the trails, going to see her patrons, and again, Junior, the mule would alert her to danger. So he definitely was a good support system. But then being in the cabin all by herself at night too, and just all the things she had to do, for her for her father, and getting ready for seeing her patrons the next day. She was very brave. She was very courageous.
Vivian and then Fran.
Life made her brave. She had so much going against her. She had no choice if she wanted to survive, but be brave. Being she was married against her will, obviously, with Charles Fraser, and she performed her own abortion by taking whatever liquids or whatever that her mother showed her how to do. And that's very brave, especially in that era, especially with the belief that she was surrounded by. And she did it on her own. She was brave from moment one.
All right, now I'm confused.
May I say something? I'm confused. Wasn't she able to marry because the first marriage had never been consummated? Or am I
He raped
looking at the wrong book?
He raped her. And that's how she got so beaten up.
Or at
Broke
least he
down.
tried to. But then she said when she and the one she really did, that she married at the end, she said they could marry because he had never. I'm in the wrong book.
She had
I'm sorry.
That's the wrong book.
He removed
That
his
sounds
feet.
like the giver of stars.
Yeah,
it
it
is.
is. Okay. Yeah.
Which I'm now going to have to read.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
But it's different but similar. And after time passes, you'll confuse the two stories.
I confuse everything anyway. So
Hold on.
And it would be interesting to see if it really feel it's plagiarized.
Is this the book where the creek floods?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, it's fine. Join the rest of us.
You know what? I want to talk about the flood for a second. It's interesting. There was a woman who lived by herself right by the creek. And how
the other book.
The other book?
That's the other book.
You
not
said
the
this is the book where the creek floods.
Yeah, that's
the
the giver
giver
of
of-
stars. The
Wrong
giver of
book.
stars had that black couple.
No. There's one where there's a woman who lives alone and everybody pitches in to help her, to rescue her.
Other book.
Other book.
Other book.
Anybody want to comment on this book?
I will.
Go for it, Fran.
I don't think the definition of courage per se changes. Courage is it's the ability to do what you feel is right, no matter what the circumstance. Different things may interfere considering the time that you live in, so that there are different aspects of it. But as far as being able to deal with what you have to stand up for, that's a capacity that's within you, within the person.
Well, courage is also that quiet voice inside of you that if you do fail says, I'm going to try again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
The next day.
Jane, did you want to say something? You're still muted. You can't unmute. All right. Well, whenever you can unmute, let us know. In the meantime, Lori.
I got it.
Oh, you did it.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it wasn't working. I just wanted to mention on the cover of the book, I thought it was interesting that on the cover of the book, she's not blue. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but she's white. And I was surprised that that's how the illustrator chose to do it like that. Plus her face was not shown. So when you talk about how we didn't really know what she looked like, I mean, and they chose to do that purposely. They cut off her body on the cover of the book. I mean,
I read it on Kindle. I have no idea.
Oh.
Somebody who has it in front of them. And there it is.
And there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting and odd.
I don't know why.
Vivian?
You can see a little bit of blue in the nails, but that's all. If you look at that very carefully, but not much. But the skin itself does look white.
Well, it's almost like paint that it's on the book, the cover of the book.
Mhm.
It's like there's a blue swath of paint.
Yeah, it's a blue.
You have to remember, she wasn't very blue. She would hide her hands when they would turn blue.
Right.
Basically white with a blue tint.
Right.
And so that's the difference.
So the cover of the book, it actually has this blue paint, as you're saying, but the blue paint crosses her hands, and her fingers, if you can see it, are actually white, but the blue paint is
Oh,
over.
maybe.
Do you see that? I think that's
Yes,
really
I do.
interesting.
I thought it was on
Yeah.
her nails, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see
And
it.
on her hand, she has blue, but that's because of the blue paint that goes across.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If they
Very,
had
very.
made- If they had made her blue on the cover, it would have looked like some kind of science fiction book. Like,
Don't, yeah. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Or do judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
Pam?
Two things I wanted to say. There was another book club years ago that we did, Coal River, which takes place in an earlier time in Kentucky, and the miners and the children in the mines and fighting for the unions. And this is already 10 or more years later, and they're still fighting for the union, and the conditions aren't any better. And then it gave me another thought. Years ago, we went to the West and we traveled over Mount Hood, and halfway over the mountain in Oregon, I think it was, we stopped at a lodge that was constructed by the WPA. It had very interesting artwork because Roosevelt gave the artists a chance to work and get money to produce art. Men and women who were woodworkers, is beautiful formations of different types of wood. The whole lodge was built by these men who were handy in woodworking, and it's a very interesting lodge. You can still have lunch there and see the place in a tour. But it just made me think now, all this money, yes, it was good. They paid the architect, they paid the woodworkers and the builders and the artists, but it's a shame that Roosevelt didn't put some of the money just to build some log cabins in this area of Appalachia where the people were living in the most horrendous conditions. That's it.
I think that a lot of what Roosevelt gets credit for was actually Eleanor. I think that he was an extremely prejudiced person who thought he was way above the rest of the world.
Yep.
And that needs to be taken into consideration when one thinks about what turned out that he did that was good, and other things that he refused to do, like letting Jews into the country, like a little
Right.
thing. They caused our death. Okay, I said my spiel. Donna.
Okay. So Cussy kind of lived for doing this, for being the librarian. She spent a lot of her own time preparing the manuscripts and figuring out what her clients would need. She really was a professional in that sense, and she had a lot of sense of purpose in that life. Now, she did have her chores when she came home at night, and she tended to her father and the dinner, but I think it gave her, it was her profession. It was beautiful how she did that. I also wanted to thank you for sending out those videos about the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, as well as the other book, that Giver of Stars. We got to meet the authors and see them, and it definitely brought both books to life. So thank you for sending those videos out.
You're welcome.
I appreciate everything Helen sends out, and I always look at them, so it's great.
I like to be able to see the author, and that's one of the reasons I go looking for them.
It makes the book more real when you actually meet the author and hear her speak her own words too.
I agree. Okay, people are leaving in drones. We just lost 10 people, so how about if we rate the book, tell us why. Ellen, you're my first. Annie lay next to her.
I love the book. The problem is I read it so long ago, and I read the other book that's similar, so I got them confused. But I absolutely love the book. I couldn't put it down. And the worst of it is, I'll go through a book in 2 or 3 days. And then, my housework isn't getting done. Only the laundry gets done because I can do laundry at the same time.
Well, luckily, we're not going to come visit you right now and find that out. So what the heck? How about you, Elaine?
Well, I love the book, but like Ellen said, I read it a long time ago. And you lose some of it when you've read it so long ago.
Yeah, we read it for another book club.
Uh-huh.
A long time ago.
Okay, thank you. Margie? Why don't you all unmute yourself and then you'll save the time.
This is a book I really did like. I really could visualize the characters. It moved for me. I cried during parts of it. I was, wow, so such difficult, tough lives these characters had. I give it a 10.
Barb Elson.
I loved it. I would give it a 10. First of all, for librarians to be heroes, what could be better than that? And the power of the printed word. So I just thought it was wonderful. And I thought this discussion was wonderful too. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you haven't listened to the song, you should listen to the song. It's very nice.
Agreed.
Very good. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me as I admit somebody in. Okay. Diane.
Eileen,
Yes.
excuse me. I just want to send a message. Hey, I typed it out. How do you actually send it?
Just hit return.
Just hit return?
Or
I believe
enter.
so.
Enter.
Well, on mine it's return. It could be enter on yours.
Yeah, it's not something I don't think you got it, my message, right?
Um.
I haven't been, I'm hitting enter.
Now
Here
we
it goes. We got it.
You got
You
it?
just
Okay.
got it.
Thank you, everybody. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, Dara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I go out of turn? I have on my iPad another Zoom class.
Look forward to.
Thank
Wow.
you very much. Thank you, ladies. It was amazing. I give it a 9.5, close to a 10. I set myself not to like this book when I first started reading it, and I was compelled, and it was amazing, and I learned a lot. I knew nothing about the Blue people before, and I think her character study was just done so well. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you, Sue. Diana.
Oh, a 9.5. The writing was great. The characters were great. The situations were great. She covered a lot of ground, not only medical, sociological, historical, and with the coal mines. I was trying to remember the name of that book, Coal River. They talked about the something boys who they sent in to do the dirty work. I forget
Right.
but
The
they
Breaker Boys.
Breaker Boys, thank you. That was mentioned here too, as well as the union issues and everything. They really just touched on that. They didn't do too much, but they really covered a lot of ground. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Jane.
I loved it. I'd give it a 10. I love the writing. I love the experience of learning about everything that I didn't realize. So I'm all in. I loved it.
Sheila.
I loved it as well. I gave it a 10. I thought it was written beautifully, and I learned so much about the people in Appalachia, as well as I love learning about the Blue people, which I knew nothing about.
We have a lot of
Really great, wonderful.
Thank you. Somebody has radio on or television in the background. Libby?
I give it an 11. It's one of the best books I ever read. It's a treat to read historical fiction and enjoy it so much. It focused on all varied social injustices, prejudice, women's issue, extreme poverty, the coal mining industry horrors, education, lack of education, the medical issue. There were so many layers. It's like layers of an onion. And her sweet inner beauty was extraordinary. And she was so unselfish. And it was almost as if she lived in order to make the world a better place, which is I think it's my goal, it's your goal. We want to feel purposeful, that we have a sense of accomplishment. She was the most decent human being and a heroine you could truly empathize with and adore. And I have recommended this book to so many people. And I think this book would have been made into a movie had she had the name recognition of Jojo Moyes.
Yes, definitely.
Very interesting. Marilyn, you're next, and welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I enjoyed the book. I love historic fiction, and I always appreciate learning something new. I knew nothing about the Blewett people. So thank you, and it was great to see everybody that I haven't seen in over a year.
Well, good to
Thank
see
you.
you also. Audrey, did I call on you yet?
No, not yet. I would give it a 10. I thought it was great. I thought it was very informative. I learned a lot about the Blue people. I even researched afterwards. The character development was incredible. You just, you so admired Cussie and what she did. It was just incredible. And I really liked it better than The Giver of Stars. I thought it was great.
Yes, I agree.
Pam.
I also loved the book. I found it fascinating. I felt like I was in that era. And like someone had said, it covers so many different areas of history that I was not familiar with. I did want to make one comment. In some of the videos that I've seen, there is one circulating by Oprah Winfrey, and she had this blue man come on her program. And then I read about him. He was not a real true blue person, although he lived in Kentucky. He was taking colloidal silver, which made him turn blue. Someone told him it would cure whatever his stomach ailment or something was, and he kept taking it. And then it got to the point where he was this bright blue color, but he's not one of the Fugate genetic blue people. But it was a great book. I really learned a lot about it. And she warms your heart. Having been a reading teacher, who's always, I have so many books now for my grandchildren that have returned it to me from teaching. I hand it out to my neighbors in Newtown who are grandparents, and it goes on to another generation. I wish everyone a good day, and lovely to see all of you.
You too. Fran?
I too like the book very, very much. It was very interesting. I like historical fiction, and I think she did a very good job in presenting the era and the place. 9.
Vivian.
I did not like the book at the beginning. I read it twice. The first time, the way it was written drove me absolutely insane. I don't do well with jargon. I don't do well with Kentucky way of spelling young ones. And I had to read so slowly. It's not until I reread it the second time that I appreciated it. Another thing I did not like with the book is the first scene is you see that hanging man and the baby, and you don't hear about it until at least 3/4 of the book. So that I kept on saying, but who is that person? And then I forgot about him until the very end. Second time around, I really did enjoy it. A lot of information. I learned a lot, broadened my mind, learned about miscegenation law, blue people, whatever. So I did really enjoy the second time around. First time, the language drove me insane. I don't do well with that kind of English.
Sorry. Yes.
I'd give it a 9. I really liked it. I read both that and the Jojo Moyes book. And when I heard about the controversy, this book is so much better. It's historical fiction, but it's been researched. Jojo Moyes' book is a story. It's a good book, but it's a story. It doesn't give you nearly as much as this. And I can see why this author was angry that the 2 books came out almost at the same time. And because Moyes is an author that many people like, she really got, she got a movie and everything else. I don't think there's really been plagiarism. I don't know if other people that read both books feel that way, but I do feel that, what's her name, Richards, was gypped out of some of the good press she should have had because she did not have a name.
Okay, Jeannie?
I think that this book smacks of somebody that lived the life. She actually lived in Appalachia for a while. I didn't explain this during the bio, but she did. and her husband ended up with Lyme disease as a result of it. So they really, went the full mile. And I think you get a sense of that when you read it. And I think it gave us all a sense of hope. And at this time, for somebody as wonderful as that, we needed to have that in our lives right now. So I gave it a 10.
Thank you. Arlene?
Once again, as always, I thought today's was a wonderfully great discussion. And I had heard of the Blue People. I'm a medical technologist, and I'm sure that the condition that some of you are having trouble with how to pronounce it is called methemoglobinemia. And
thank you.
I looked into it a lot more after reading the book, or probably while I was reading the book, which only took me maybe 3 days. I really enjoyed reading the book. I thought the style of the writing was very interesting. I would probably give it between a 9 and a 9.5. The part that really bothered me the most, and I realized it's because of a sign of the times that it was written, in the year that it was written and in the place where they wrote it about in Kentucky, because it's in the South. There was just so much racism and discrimination and the word colored in the book that I think that kind of really bothered me. But of course, that's what the book was all about. So I liked the book a lot.
Thank you. Elaine?
I really enjoyed the book. I thought it did cover a lot of subjects, and I did learn a lot. I've never heard of the Blue People before, and I did look it up. Once I started reading it and it said Blue People, I thought, well, did it really exist? So I did look it up to see and read a lot of things about it, which I think that's good when it makes you want to go further to research something. And I love historical fiction because I'm always learning something new from it. And I would give the book a 9.5.
Bonnie Zuckerman?
I enjoyed the book. I would give the book a 9. What I found most fascinating about it was, again, learning about the Blue People and, looking up information, just to increase my knowledge. But I think the thing that fascinated me most was learning about the pack mule librarians. I thought that was just fascinating, just how they went to these remote, areas, I thought that was fascinating. But again, I'd give it a 9, and thank you. It was a very good discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Barb? We're not hearing you. You're still muted.
I give it a 10. I learned so much about the history of this whole business and about the Blue People and how wonderful she was. And when I got to the last part where the man was hanging, I realized this was it. When I first saw that, I thought this was just racism, that they were just hanging this because he was, and they didn't say whether he was colored or not. But anyway, the book was really, really good. The vivid landscape, the life that these people led, and her personality and how she gave everything. And she didn't want to get married because she thought she wouldn't be able to continue being one of these book women. But her new husband researched it and made sure that she would be able to do that. And she was just a fantastic person. And the book was really riveting. I just kept reading it till the very end. So thank you. And thank you for all the people that sent in all the information. It was really very good. I'll give it a 10.
Denise?
Yes, I, as a librarian, I loved reading about the pack horse librarians. Of course, I knew about them, but also seeing the pictures at the end of the book of them, the historical pictures, I thought that was great. And learning about the Blue People, who I had never heard of. So that was wonderful. I thought Cussie was an outstanding character. She just really propelled the book. I thought there were a few storylines that were a little predictable. You knew she and Jackson would get together.
Yeah.
You knew Pa was going to die. But I would give it an 8.5. Definitely kept my interest.
Thank you. Donna?
Love the discussion as always. I get so much out of what everybody has to say. My first job was that of the librarian at age 14. And when I was in college, I worked at the dental library for a couple of years. So it's kind of neat to see a librarian have such an important role.
Right.
I enjoyed the book. I'm actually going to go now to the library to get The Giver of Stars, put down the book I'm currently reading to read that book because we're in that genre at the moment. Appreciated learning all this information. And whenever I pick up a book and I learn something completely different, I always am very appreciative to that. I think it kept our interest, loved the character development, and enjoyed the book. It's about a 9.
Anne?
I'd get, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I never can tell if it's muted or not. I'd give it about a 9 too. I really enjoyed it. Especially I think the second half. And but it's amazing how different things were then, but the same in a way. I mean, there's still unfortunately a lot of racism and ignorance with people who believe in superstitious things, such, I hate to say QAnon, but that's what I was thinking. But I loved her character, and I enjoyed the fact that she affected so many people, and some of these people, you know, because they didn't care that she was blue. They didn't even look at her. The children would just be excited when she went to the school and brought the books, and other people whose lives she touched. I thought she was a wonderful character, and I really enjoyed it, and our discussion as usual.
Thank you. Who suggested this book? Does anybody remember?
Me.
Jeannie?
Yes.
Was it you?
I did. Yes.
Well, thank you. Because I don't know that I would have picked up this book to read it, and I would give it a 10. I felt like I learned so much, and I felt what I love most, I guess, about books is the character development, and I felt it was really, really good in here. I also like learning new things and learning about new backgrounds and whatnot. But it also, it just made me sad. I mean, in this time of pandemic, there are so many people who have no money, and we are so fortunate. We're just so fortunate that it hasn't affected us in the same way, but it's so sad for all the people that it has. So I would give the book a 10. I would give my mood, 5. But I love this. I always love our discussions and appreciate it. And I appreciate those who stayed on to the very end. Does anybody have anything else to say? Diana?
I just remembered something. The school teacher, this is what bothered me the most about relations. She was married to a man who was working in the factories in Detroit. And why did she lose her job? Even though the superintendent said it will take 6 months to a year to find another school teacher, it was because her husband wanted her to come up to him, and the superintendent wouldn't let her stay on any longer unless the husband would agree to it. I mean, she had no rights as a married woman. I just thought that was
It's very true.
and very upsetting.
Yeah, that was Winnie. That was Winnie Parker.
Yes.
When I started teaching, there were still people, women teaching in the building, and this I started in 1958. That remember that they had to hide the fact that they were married in order to keep on teaching. And later than that, even as late as 1960s, there was the home economics teacher in my building had to hide the fact that she was married, and she had to live with an elderly lady who was approved by the school district. Young teachers either lived in their parents' home or they had to live in an approved home. And so, you know, and when I went to Westchester, there was an unenforced rule on the books. Women and men could not walk up the main street of town together. The women walked up High Street and the men walked up the street one way.
Kidding.
Wow.
Sounds like the 1800s.
Where was this?
Westchester, and now it's Westchester University. Then it was State Teachers College.
Yeah,
And
'cause
there
I
were
taught
all
in
kinds of rules. I got called on the red carpet in my principal's office because I had red nail polish.
Oh my
God.
Oh, gosh.
You are a trailblazer, Ellen.
It's crazy.
No, I taught in Philadelphia in '63, and there was no problem with marriage, but you couldn't look pregnant once you hit what was the fourth or fifth month. That was it.
Well, you know what's
couldn't
funny?
be pregnant. You couldn't be pregnant when you came back in September because I know I was pregnant. I was in Chamonix then. I was pregnant and I hid it because I was not supposed to come back that September knowing, even though I didn't leave till February, because as my gynecologist said, she's going to have the baby in her classroom.
You
But
could not come back from maternity leave until 9 months after the baby was born.
Wow.
It wasn't up to you when you came back. There were all kinds of crazy rules. But I remember my principal, I asked about the maternity, but you couldn't be there in maternity clothes. And this man said to me, he says, well, you wouldn't want, these are junior high school and junior high. You wouldn't want the children to wonder what you did to get that way.
Oh.
I remember when I was working, I had to bring a note in from my doctor, and they told me at work what my last day would be.
Oh
I had no choice. That after that day, I was no longer employed, and my doctor went and lied. He said that I was due a month later than what I was, because he said there was no reason to stop working at 6 months.
Wow.
He put it down, I didn't. And on top of that, I had my son 8 days early. So I called him up to tell him I had a 10-pound baby. And it was born almost 6, according to my stat. And somebody said to me, I thought you were further along than that.
That's great.
Lizzie, did you want to say something? You're muted. Still muted. Now you're okay.
Okay. I neglected to thank our wonderful presenters for doing such a great job, and also Helen for sending us that added bonus. And Eileen, you did a great job with the questions and commentary also.
Oh, well, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
Jeannie,
everybody.
Thank you,
Hats
Vivian.
off.
Helen,
Hats off to
always.
everyone.
Always.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending.
Then, so it's the third Tuesday, whatever that date is of next
I think
month.
it's the 16th. I checked,
Okay, and it's the vanishing half.
but I swear to nothing.
Who among us does? Bye, all.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.
Get vaccinated.
There it goes.
If we can.
Yes, good luck with that if you haven't gotten it.
Bucks County, I heard, is opening 3
At the
places
community
people
college,
can
yeah.
Yeah,
go.
but
Yeah, one of my sons was there. Yep.